Joining me live here in the studio, Shadow Employment and Workplace Relations Minister Michaelia Cash. Thanks very much for your time.
Great to be with you, Tom.
So I guess the first question is, do we have a problem? Do we need to get wages going in this country?
Everybody in Australia wants higher wages. The opposition wants higher wages, but I can tell you right now, the proposed bill put in by Tony Burke is not the way to do it. Tony Burke going forward, the only thing he will be known for is as the Minister for Strikes. Governments don't create jobs, employers do. When you have employers across Australia standing up and saying the only thing this bill will do is literally strike action across our economy, resulting in job losses, quite frankly, Tom, you've got a massive problem.
Okay, so beyond just the wages element though, do we have a problem with workplace agreements not getting done? There are more in negotiation phase than are done.
Well, let's be very, very clear on this.
Is that an inherent problem?
The answer is yes, and that is why the Morrison government brought forward around 2 years ago now changes to the Parliament to get enterprise agreements moving. And guess what? The Labor opposition at the time fought against us every single step of the way. So this is the better off overall test,
the better off overall test. So there were parts Labor didn't like and they voted against the whole thing.
And within reason, they are now bringing those changes forward in their own bill. So if Labor were dinkum about getting wages moving in this country, they would have supported the opposition's changes around 2 years ago now.
Let's delve into what they're saying, because one of your press releases talks about sympathy strikes for small businesses. This legislation specific, it does not give strike rights for small business employees. So
well, let's be very clear here. What it does do is open up our economy to industry-wide strike action. That is agreed. We agree with that. We agree with that.
But this is important to clarify. Small business has a definition. Fewer than 15 employees.
Yeah, 15 employees.
They won't have strike rights and they have a purely opt-in negotiation phase.
So Tom, you tell me, the cafe you last visited on a Saturday in Sydney, did it have more than 15 employees? Because I can tell you right now, there are many businesses across Australia that have 15
I understand that. We're going to get into the single employees.
But what is worse is it's headcount, not full-time equivalent. So if you've got 15 part-timers, guess what? An extra one and you are in.
But this is the Fair Work Commission definition, right? So I'm just clarifying, because on your media release it says small businesses. You can talk about smaller businesses, that's fine, but the definition of a small business in this country, they will not have, those employees will not have the right to strike.
Hold on. What about when
Shouldn't you want to clarify?
Well, what about when their supply chain goes down? There'll be an impact on them. Tom, the point is, this opens up Australia to industry-wide strike action at a time of rising interest rates, rising inflation, higher electricity prices. Australians, on any analysis on the budget that was handed down, hold on Tuesday night,
I really want to clarify.
$2,000 worse off.
But small businesses.
Why would you open up the economy to this type of strike action?
Okay, but small businesses, those employees cannot strike. I mean, this should be something you want to tell small businesses, don't worry, this will not allow you to strike, and we'd never let something pass that could strike.
That is the only part that they are exempted from. What about the flexible work arrangements? What about the ability of a small business to now negotiate? You and I work together, you're my boss, I come to you, we work out my flexible work arrangements ourselves. That right is now being taken from you as my boss, because I can now go to the Commission and guess what? The Commission can tell you, as my small business boss, how I will be working from you.
So there is a conciliation and arbitration, but so that change essentially previously, if I as the employee in this case say, hey, can I get flexible hours, and you say no.
You and I'd work it out together.
If you say no though, I don't get anywhere. That's where it was
based
before.
On reasonable business grounds. And Tom, what I'd put to you is this. What did COVID-19 highlight for all Australians? Employers and employees, guess what? They work together in the best interests of both parties. The fundamental change with this legislation is the ability for the employer and the employee to come together and negotiate is being stripped away from them.
Okay.
So that ability to negotiate at an enterprise level, thrown out the window for a one-size-fits-all approach. Now, you tell me, a small business with 16 employees, are their circumstances the same as a business with 200 employees? I'd argue they're not.
So, well, that's where it gets to single interest, and that is a bit of perhaps clarification needed, because
Well,
what
actually
is a
agree.
single interest?
Yeah. Okay. So based on the Act, based on the change that they're making, it is a broadening and a very dangerous broadening, I would argue, of single interest, geographic location and regulatory environment. So take my home state of Western Australia. I would argue that a single interest or a common interest, you're in the mining industry in a geographic location. What about the supply chain impacts there? Again, when every employer in Australia stands up and says, this bill is going to basically bring this country to its knees, it's what the union movement have wanted, is going to result in strike action across our economy. Again, I say to you, rising interest rates, rising unemployment.
You've mentioned that. I just want to try to get through some of this more detail. So you mentioned supply chains. That's actually a specific factor the Fair Work Commission needs to put in there when it's considering whether to give any given company or the employees a right to strike. So if they think that's going to cause a supply issue or adversely affect the economy as a whole, they say no. That's it. That's in this legislation.
Why, if you didn't want to encourage strike action in Australia, would you even bring in this change? The Labor Party prior to the election said they would not go down this path.
Well, Labor's thought on this is obviously where's the bargaining power, how can we get deals? But can we just recognise that? So there is provisions within this recognising supply chains. You mentioned supply chains.
You're looking at it in a very, very simplistic way. Employers across Australia, the job creators of this country, has stood up unanimously yesterday and said Labor's Industrial Relations Bill will bring our country to its knees.
But I'm just going to the detail of it. This matters in this legislation.
Well, let's talk about detail,
so
because you are right. Hold on. You are right. The bill is 250 pages. It is very detailed legislation. It was only tabled in the Parliament yesterday. There are 261 pages of an explanatory memorandum. And guess what? It is going to be rammed through this Parliament in the final 2 sitting weeks.
And crossbenchers.
So you tell me, no, quite genuinely, how do employers get over this legislation? Why is it that the Labor Party can't agree for a proper committee process and to bring the bill back on into the Parliament next year?
That's not up for me to tell you. That's fair enough for you to question and the crossbench to question that. I think there's a lot of people saying it's a lot of detail until December 1.
There is a lot of detail in this bill.
Fair enough. What about when we talk about the single interest stream? This is the one that could be given more strike rights. So there's elements in this that the process seems to be, first of all, conciliation, which I think most people would say, well, that's good, talk to each other. Then there might be some strike rights and then compulsory arbitration.
Let me take you through
that final point I want to talk about, compulsory arbitration. Is that something that could ultimately play some good? Because at the moment there's so many deals, as I say, there are still more deals sitting there in limbo versus deals that are completed. Why not get the umpire?
Let's take a step back and look at the single interest stream at the moment. Very limited definition of common interest, and I need to consent to get into the stream. What is the fundamental change here? They are broadening the common interest. So again, hamburger joints around Australia, you all sell hamburgers, guess what, you're in. And consent is gone, Tom. I can now be dragged kicking and screaming into bargaining. That is absolutely unacceptable. Conciliation, guess what? People who get divorced go to conciliation, and guess what? It's over in 5 minutes. The mere fact that you are brought to the table to conciliate does not mean when you're dragged kicking and screaming, you will get an outcome. And as for arbitration, guess what, Tom? You have just removed the ability for employers and employees, and in particular those who did not want to be in this process, to sit down and do what they do best, which is work with one another in the best interest.
But that's
Tom,
possible in the conciliation. I'm not sure why this conciliation is suddenly going for 5 minutes. What?
Well, hold on, Tom.
The compulsory arbitration is the final step. We don't have much time. I'm sure we'll talk about this again. A couple of quick things.
Well, I don't know about that because it's only a 3-week process and then it's going straight into the House and then into the Senate.
What about the Fair Work Commission with greater power to step in if employers are delaying? Because in that situation, employers often delay. The employees, every day they're missing out on a pay increase. It sort of costs them. Is it the delaying tactic and the threat to be able to go back to a default deal or the award? Is that a good thing to remove?
Well, again, this is all about changes to the way we negotiate agreements in this country.
So what do you make of that change?
We brought forward to the Parliament 18 months to 2 years ago now very sensible changes that within reason are reflected in Labor's bill.
So that's, you'd be comfortable with that?
Why did they not accept those changes at the time?
Okay. So
did
you think that mirrors your...
them purely for political purposes? That is the question.
You think that mirrors one of the changes you were going to be brought?
I support changes to the Better Off Overall test. But Tom, in relation to the bill itself, this is a fundamentally flawed bill. It abolishes the Australian Building and Construction Commission. The tough cop on the beat in the construction sector is gone. The CFMMEU are literally back in town when it comes to the construction sector.
It is very detailed, and I've gone well over time. I better end it there. I'm sure we'll talk about this again because it's something close to your heart. We appreciate your time today. Maybe I'll get your reaction. Actually, Elon Musk completing his Twitter deal. What do you think about that?
Oh, look, if only I had that much money. That's all I can say, seriously. It's been interesting to follow and, look, good on Elon Musk. There you go.
OK. Michaelia Cash, thank you.